Hi everyone, I am very excited to be here with you today. Thank you so much for watching. I am Craig Manis. I am the Director of Business Operations here at American Legacy Tours. And as you all know, one of my favorite things to do, for those who know me, is walk around town showing off this amazing city, this great neighborhood of Over the Rhine, and showing some of my favorite places. As a company, we've been doing this for over 10 years now, walking around, showing some great spaces, telling some amazing stories. And we are so used to having big groups around us everywhere we go. As you can see now, not so much, unfortunately, due to current situations. We cannot bring you to the wonderful spots we like to show off in the city. So we thought, what can we do instead? Let's bring these spaces to you. And we are launching a new YouTube channel. Thank you so much for participating in the inaugural video here. Please make sure you subscribe to our new channel and like our videos. This is a new concept we're doing. We're going to go all around town showing some really cool spots throughout the series. So thank you for being with us. I'm coming to you today from one of my favorite spots here in the neighborhood. This is the John Kauffman Brewery tunnels that we are standing in right now. As we refer to them today, we like to call them the official American Legacy Tours quarantine bunker. And I have been quarantining, self-quarantining myself down here for quite some time right now. I'll show you a little bit of the setup that I have going on. So got the cooler set up. Got some local beers, Taft's Ale House, Rheingeist, little Christian Moore line. Got my McCarrick Spirits, Northern Row. Got a little Northern Row hand sanitizer down there too. Very important to sanitize and wash your hands these days, folks, with this quarantine going on. And of course, got that sunscreen since it's so bright and sunny down here in the bunker. Got to always make sure you watch your skin. Sure, a lot of us are going to need that sunscreen once this quarantine ends. We all go outside for the first time in several weeks. And in case you got too bored, just toss the ball around here. So I got a couple empties. Obviously you will. Being under quarantine, these things will happen. Welcome to the underground cellars of the John Kauffman Brewery. The space that we are standing in right now took 3 years to build. They opened up in 1860. We are just over 30 feet underground, where it's a consistent 55 degrees every day throughout the entire year. The reason that these tunnels exist is because before you had modern mechanical refrigeration, you needed a way to keep your beer nice and cold. There's two main styles of beer in the world. Every beer falls into one of two categories. What are those two categories, folks? Sorry, used to audience participation on these things. You have, it's not light or dark, it's not warm or cold, it's not yummy or not yummy. Sorry, it is lagers and your ales. Every beer falls into one of those two categories. Your ales typically ferment at a higher temperature, usually around room temperature, typically have a higher alcohol content as well. Now your lager style beer, preferred beer of the Germans, and a lot of those Germans really brought that lager beer with them here to Cincinnati. That beer is typically going to have a lower alcohol content, so you can drink them all day long during your quarantine, and you tend not to fall over. But they also ferment at a lower temperature, typically only about 40 to 45 degrees. So before you had mechanical refrigeration, this is the technology you would use to make your lager style beer. You'd make that beer between the late fall and early springtime. When the breweries had access to blocks of ice, they would bring that ice here to the brewery, storing it 2 floors above us in cork-lined rooms. And those racks you see along the ceiling, those would have supported copper piping. So imagine copper pipes flowing back and forth throughout all these tunnels. And you could use that ice to pump cold water through those pipes, dropping the temperature from that present 55 degrees down to that ideal 40 to 45 degrees. Now you have two byproducts to fermentation. You have alcohol, and you're going to get carbon dioxide. So around the back of those tunnels there, you see those little spots that look like fireplaces. Those are not actually fireplaces. Those are ventilation shafts. You have ventilation shafts cut into the ceiling. That's going to allow colder air to work its way into the room. Cold air works its way to the floor, pushes that carbon dioxide out through those floor vents there in the back. and that's the way you can constantly circulate fresh air throughout these chambers. So get a lot of workers down here. Very important to get that carbon dioxide out. These tunnels were integral to the production of lager style beer, and as I mentioned, lager beer was all over the city. Germans really brought a lot of that lager here. We had 23 breweries here in Cincinnati at the height of brewing up until Prohibition, and that's full-on production breweries. There were some different restaurants, some different taverns that brewed their own style of beer, which brought that number to about 36. But as far as full-on production breweries, you had, what you would have is 23 full-on production breweries right here in Cincinnati. I'll show you that tunnel there in the back. That goes back to the sidewalk of Vine Street. And the sidewalk of Vine Street, there would have been a tunnel that would have opened up there in the ceiling, allowing beer barrels to roll down here. They get those empty barrels down here, refill them, and then they can send them back off to market. Those barrels rolled through here constantly, folks. Of all the beer that we produced in this city in the 1890s, about 60% of that beer never traveled more than a mile from the brewery itself. We were drinking a lot of our own product. In fact, at that same time period, Americans on average drank 16 gallons of beer per year, every man, woman, and child. But in Cincinnati, we tend to do things a little bit better. About 2.5 times better, in fact, and we were drinking over 40 gallons per year, every man, woman, and child. It's a lot of beer. Now, when you take those children out of that equation, we're talking 100, 150, maybe 200 gallons a year on average. So we were drinking a lot of beer at that time. Beer was flowing around this town. In 1890 alone, we had over 1,800 drinking establishments in the entire city of Cincinnati. Our city was about 7 square miles at that time. In fact, right here and over the Rhine, you had about 45,000 people in this neighborhood, 75% German. A lot of beer production, big part of our city. And now I'm going to take you, walk you through the tunnel, show you off some of these spaces, and give you a little virtual tour. Folks, now I'm going to take you on a little virtual tour here of the tunnel space. Of course, there's a lot more to see down here than what you're going to see right now, but you'll have to come back on a tour, check some of that space out. This is one of the biggest sets of tunnels that we have here in the city, and one of my favorite sets of tunnels as well. We've been down here for 10 years now touring the space. I've been down here for 7. Probably been down here a couple thousand times with tour groups, so a lot of sentimental value for me for these tunnels. I love showing them off and love having people down here. But this is the next best thing we can do right now. One of the biggest questions I get at the tunnels is, what in the world is all this dirt doing out here? I mentioned the tunnels were used prior to mechanical refrigeration. This is how you would make lager style beer. Well, after mechanical refrigeration comes into play, the tunnels essentially became obsolete, and they just filled in a bunch of debris, a bunch of dirt dumped down here, some coal ash. So the tunnels were useless to the brewery, so they filled them in. A lot of people ask, were the tunnels used for Prohibition? No, they were not. Most of these were all filled in long prior to Prohibition. So used pretty much just in the late 1800s, very early 1900s for mechanical refrigeration. Took about 90 years before anyone came down here and discovered the tunnels. So come on, tour, learn more all about that story. You can see here one of these ventilation shafts, letting that cold air come in. Ventilation shafts down on the ground. I think it's really cool having a group of folks down here exploring the space. Just imagine how amazing it would have been back in the 1800s when these would have been fully operational, and you would have had just all kinds of brewery workers down here exploring, beer flowing everywhere. We pretty much have giant fermentation tanks lining this whole spot of all kinds of barrels stacked up, beer flowing everywhere. Of course, brewery workers all drank for free on the job, so that would have been a pretty fun time. Pretty interesting to witness all that. This would have been a fresh aquifer well, nice fresh water supply for the brewery at the time. Get a hydraulic lift back in this tunnel. This would allow the brewery to get those massive full barrels back up to market. Get that beer flowing. Now, if you come on an Ultimate tour, we have some newly opened tunnels we opened up just a few years ago. So we get to explore some additional tunnel space, and we end that tour with a little beer tasting. So a lot of fun. You have to come out and check that out in person, folks. So thank you all for being here with me today. It's been my privilege, my honor, to show off the John Kauffman Brewery tunnels on our inaugural YouTube virtual tour. So please make sure to subscribe to our channel, like our videos, and I can't wait to be with you here soon, showing off the next historical space for you folks. So thank you all very much for being here with us. Have fun and be safe, everyone.